Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a look at a life that in so many ways really did build the blueprint for modern media.
It absolutely did. We're talking about a figure who was so much more than her public persona.
Much more. We're doing our deep dive today into Lucille Ball, who most people, they just remember as the beloved zany star of I Love Lucy.
Right, the comedy genius. But what our sources really compel us to focus on is her impact as a producer and a studio executive.
That's the critical distinction, isn't it?
It is. I mean, Time magazine, as recently as 2020, named her one of the most influential women of the century.
Yeah.
And that wasn't just for acting on TV.
No, it was because she owned the television studio.
Exactly. She was fundamentally changing the mechanics, both financial and technical, of how television was even made and sold around the world.
So our mission today is to really synthesize that entire journey. We're going to try to move pretty quickly, tracking her from some very difficult and unstable early years.
And a very complex, often painful personal life.
All the way through to these groundbreaking business decisions that, created the whole Desilu media dynasty. It's really a study in perseverance.
And you just have to look at her awards to set the stage. I mean, we're talking 13 Primetime Emmy nominations, 5 wins.
The Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award.
2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and induction into the Television Hall of Fame. These aren't just markers of a popular actress. This is someone who dominated every aspect of the industry.
So to really understand that drive, that ambition, we have to start at the beginning. And her foundation was really built on instability and loss.
It was. She was born Lucille Desiree Ball in 1911 in Jamestown, New York. Her father, Henry, or Had as they called him, was a lineman for Bell Telephone.
And that kind of job back then meant moving a lot.
Constantly. The family was always relocating. Our sources mention places like Anaconda, Montana, and then over to Trenton, New Jersey. Just never settled.
And that instability was then just massively compounded by a real defining tragedy.
A profound one. In 1915, they were living in Wyandotte, Michigan, and her father suddenly contracted typhoid fever and died. He was only 27 years old.
And Lucy was, 3?
Just 3. And to make it even more difficult, her mother, Dee, was pregnant at the time with Lucy's brother, Fred. It's hard to even comprehend the impact of that.
To lose your father, your family's main provider at that age, with your mother widowed and pregnant, it's just unimaginable.
In trauma like that, it leaves these strange, indelible marks. She didn't speak about it much later in life, but she did recall one very specific detail from that day.
The bird.
The bird. A bird somehow got trapped inside the house on the day her father died, and she connected that chaotic, frightening event with the loss of her father.
And that's cited as the source of her lifelong ornithophobia, her intense fear of birds.
It's a classic psychological link,
Yeah.
a specific, jarring memory from childhood trauma. After that, her mother had to move back to Celeron, New York, and Lucy and her brother were raised mostly by their maternal grandparents.
But that stability didn't last either. Her environment changed again when her mother remarried a man named Edward Peterson.
Right. And suddenly, Lucy is under the influence of her step-grandparents, who were, they were described as puritanical Swedish immigrants. And our sources say this period lasted for 7 or 8 very difficult years.
And it was characterized by some really severe restrictions.
Especially around vanity. It's almost unbelievable. But they banished all mirrors from the home, except for one, a single mirror over the bathroom sink.
And there's that famous story, right, where she was caught admiring herself in it.
Yes, and she was severely, severely chastised for it. Vanity was seen as a sin.
It's just an incredible piece of her psychological foundation, isn't it? The future queen of television, whose whole career would be based on her appearance and commanding attention.
Was being punished, actively punished, for just looking at her own reflection as a child.
You have to wonder if that repression just intensified her need for, external praise later on.
It seems highly probable, and she finally found an outlet for that. Around age 12, her stepfather, Edward, encouraged her to audition for his Shriners organization.
And that was it. That was the moment.
That was the spark. She realized that performing was a reliable way to get that praise, that affirmation that had been so denied to her. The stage was her escape.
But her personal life, it continued to be volatile. By age 14, she's dating a 21-year-old local guy named Johnny DeVita.
A local hoodlum is how he's described. And her mother, Dee, absolutely hated it. She was desperate to separate them.
And she used Lucy's ambition to do it.
She did. Despite the family having very little money, Day scraped together enough to enroll her in the John Murray Anderson School for the Dramatic Arts in New York City in 1926.
And this was a pretty prestigious school. Bette Davis was a fellow student at the time.
Yes, but the experience for Lucy was just brutal. Her instructors were openly critical. They told her flat out that she had no talent and wouldn't make it.
That must have been crushing.
You can hear it in her famous quote from that time. She said, "All I learned in drama school was how to be frightened."
But that kind of rejection, it seems like it just fueled her.
It absolutely did. She went back to New York in 1928, determined to make it work. She needed money, so she got into modeling. She became an in-house model for Hattie Carnegie.
And that's where the famous hair color comes from.
That's the moment. Carnegie ordered her to bleach her natural brown hair blonde. Lucy did it immediately. She also became the Chesterfield cigarette girl. She was just doing whatever it took to stay afloat.
The acting doors, though, they were still pretty much closed.
Slam shut, really. She tried the stage name Diane Belmont, got some chorus work, but was fired. Fired from Earl Carroll's Vanities, then fired from a touring company of Rio Rita. Just one rejection after another.
And all that hustling, that constant failure, eventually leads her to Hollywood for good in the 1930s.
She gets a contract with RKO Radio Pictures. But she is still a very, very long way from stardom. She quickly gets a nickname.
The Queen of the Bees.
The Queen of the Bees.
So for anyone listening who might not know the old studio system, can you break that down? What did being the Queen of the Bees actually imply for her career?
Sure. So in the studio system of the 30s and 40s, a B picture was a lower budget movie. It was made quickly and cheaply, and it was usually the second film on a double bill.
The movie you saw before the main event.
Exactly. So being the Queen of the Bees meant she was working constantly, taking the lead in these churned out films, and then maybe grabbing a small supporting role in a big A picture.
So she was just grinding, learning the mechanics of filmmaking on set after set.
Day in and day out. Our sources show her as an uncredited Goldwyn girl in Roman Scandals in 33. She was in a Three Stooges short in 34. She's in the background of huge Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers musicals like Top Hat.
So all that time on low-budget and high-budget sets, it's basically her real film school.
It was priceless. She was learning about efficiency, about camera angles, about production from the ground up, and those skills would become absolutely crucial when she later had to basically invent modern television production.
As we move into the 1940s, her personal life really takes over, and it starts this dynamic of, well, chaos and creativity that would define the rest of her life.
It starts in 1940. She's starring in a musical called Too Many Girls, and on that set, she meets a Cuban band leader named Desi Arnaz.
And their connection was, what, immediate?
Instantaneous and incredibly volatile. They eloped in November of 1940, and there's a small detail from their wedding night that just perfectly captures their entire relationship.
What's that?
Desi actually missed his first show that night at the Roxy Theater, but he managed to rush back in time to make the second one.
So from night one, professional demands were already clashing with their personal life.
Always. And those early years were incredibly hard. Desi was drafted into the Army in 43. He had a knee injury, so he didn't see combat, but he was away from home, serving limited duty.
And while he was away, Lucy was going through immense personal heartbreak.
She was. She suffered several miscarriages, including a very difficult one in 1942. That inability to start a family put tremendous strain on a marriage that was already struggling.
Struggling because of Arnaz's behavior.
Yes. His infidelity was becoming a major problem, as was his drinking.
And that strain, it really hit a breaking point in 1944.
It did. Ball filed for divorce. She actually obtained what's called an interlocutory decree.
Okay, for our listeners, what exactly is an interlocutory decree in this context?
It's essentially a temporary order from the court. It says, okay, the divorce will be granted, but there's a waiting period before it's finalized. It's like a cooling off period.
And in their case, they cooled off.
They did. She got the decree, but they reconciled before the final order was entered, and she withdrew the petition. It set this pattern for their whole marriage, on the verge of collapse, followed by reconciliation and this burst of creative partnership.
And all the while, she's still fighting for her career in Hollywood. She signs with MGM in the 40s, but she's still stuck with that Queen of the Bees label.
But she finds two hugely important mentors during this time, Buster Keaton and the director Edward Sedgwick.
And these relationships were really transformative for her as a performer.
Absolutely. Buster Keaton, the silent film genius, he specifically taught her about physical comedy, the timing, how to work with props, the pure mechanics of a visual gag without needing a single line of dialogue.
This very grounded, almost mathematical approach to being funny.
Precisely. And she mastered it. It's what moved her from just being a glamorous actress to being a truly skilled physical comedian. Those are the skills the world would soon see in I Love Lucy.
But before we get there, we have to talk about this significant political shadow that nearly ended her career before it truly began.
The communist affiliation controversy.
And when we talk about this kind of politically charged content, we stick strictly to the documented facts from our sources. So what are the concrete details here?
The sources confirm this. When Lucille Ball registered to vote in 1936, she listed her party affiliation as communist. Her mother and brother did the same.
And it was more than just checking a box.
It was. That same year, she signed a certificate to sponsor a Communist Party candidate. And on that document, it explicitly stated, "I am registered as affiliated with the Communist Party." The party in California also appointed her to the state's Central Committee.
This sounds pretty involved. So how did this record from the 30s become a full-blown crisis in the middle of the Red Scare?
Well, it had been bubbling under the surface. Back in 1940, a writer testified before the House Un-American Activities Committee, UIC, that she'd attended a party meeting at what she was told was Lucy's home. But the real firestorm hit in the early 1950s.
Right when I Love Lucy is the biggest thing in America.
Exactly. The worst possible time. In the context of 1953 Hollywood, with McCarthyism at its peak, this was a catastrophic threat. UIC could blacklist you, and your career would be over.
Just finished. And for the star of a show that was making millions for CBS and its sponsors.
The risk was immense. So in September 1953, the pressure was on, and she voluntarily met with a HUIC investigator, a man named William Wheeler, to give sealed testimony.
What was her defense? How did she explain this record?
She stated that she only registered as a communist at the insistent urging of her socialist grandfather, Fred Hunt. She told them, quote, "I at no time intended to vote as a communist."
So she framed it as an act of family loyalty, not political conviction.
That was the argument. She tried to soften it by saying that back then, being a Republican felt almost as bad as being a communist, just to show how polarized things were.
And did HUAC buy it?
They did. She was cleared. The FBI memo to J. Edgar Hoover specifically noted that a review of her file showed no activity that would warrant her inclusion on the security index. The legal danger was over.
But the public relations nightmare was just beginning.
It was. And that is where Desi Arnaz pulls off one of the most brilliant pieces of PR management in television history.
It's legendary.
Just before they started filming episode 68, The Girls Go Into Business, Desi walks out in front of the live studio audience. He addresses the whole controversy head on.
No hiding.
No. He stands there with all his charm and authority and delivers the line that saved everything. He said, "The only thing red about Lucy is her hair, and even that is not legitimate."
And the audience erupted.
They did. In one sentence, he turned a career-ending political threat into a harmless joke about hair dye. It gave the public the closure they needed and protected the show completely.
So with that crisis behind them, they could finally focus on building their empire. And the whole journey to I Love Lucy really started with her CBS radio show.
Right, My Favorite Husband. It was a huge hit, and CBS wanted to adapt it for this new medium, television. But Lucy had one non-negotiable demand.
She wanted Desi to play her husband.
And the CBS executives, they were absolutely against it. Their prejudice was, well, it was pretty stark. They just did not believe the American public would accept an Anglo-American redhead married to a Cuban.
They thought it would be unbelievable, or just unappealing.
Both, which is just incredible to think about now, considering they became one of the most famous couples in history.
Yeah.
But they had to literally prove they were marketable.
And how did they do that?
They took their act on the road. They financed their own vaudeville tour, with Lucy as the zany wife trying to get into Desi's band. It was a sensation.
It showed the chemistry was real and the comedy dynamic worked.
It did. The tour was such a hit, it forced CBS's hand. They got the green light.
But that was only the first battle. The next was about where to film it. Lucy and Desi refused to move to New York.
Right. They wanted to stay in Los Angeles. And in 1951, that was a massive technical and financial problem.
Why was that such a hurdle back then?
Because early television was basically broadcast live theater, and New York was the hub. If you filmed a show in L.A. at 8 p.m., it would air at 11 p.m. on the East Coast, which was way too late for primetime advertisers.
So the solution at the time was something called a kinescope.
Yes, and kinescopes were notoriously bad. It was basically a film camera pointed at a TV monitor to record the live broadcast. The quality was terrible, murky, distorted.
And the main ad market on the East Coast wasn't going to accept that.
No way. The sponsor, Philip Morris, said it was unacceptable. So they had a choice. Move to New York or broadcast a terrible-looking product.
And this is the moment. This is where Desi Arnaz proposes the deal that changes everything.
It was pure genius, born from necessity.
Yeah.
He said their company, Desilu Productions, would take a pay cut. They would cover the extra costs to shoot every single episode on high-quality 35mm film stock.
The same film they used for Hollywood movies.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
solved the quality problem. They could film a pristine image and ship it to New York for broadcast. But here was the crucial part of the deal.
The trade-off.
The trade-off. In exchange for financing the filming, Desi stipulated that Desilu Productions would retain all ownership rights to the episodes after their first broadcast.
And the network. They just agreed to that. They must have known how valuable those rights could be.
They literally laughed at him. The idea of reruns or syndication didn't exist in their minds. They were still thinking like radio executives, where a show airs once and it's gone.
So they thought they were getting a great deal, saving money on filming and giving away something worthless.
They thought the film reels were useless relics. But Arnaz, his foresight was incredible. He knew that one day there would be hundreds of TV stations all needing content to fill their airtime.
He basically invented the syndication model.
He did, and the payoff was astronomical. By 1957, CBS realized their mistake and had to buy the rights back from Desilu. They paid $1 million.
Which today is worth, what, over $11 million?
That's right. And what did Desilu do with that money?
They bought the studio where she used to be the Queen of the Bees.
They bought the old RKO studios and turned it into Desilu Studios. They now owned the physical means of production, all financed by the show they had to fight to get on the air.
And beyond the finances, they were also revolutionizing how sitcoms were actually shot.
A total revolution. They pioneered the 3-camera setup, filming before a live audience to get genuine laughter and perfect comedic timing.
And they used adjacent sets, right, so they could move quickly from the living room to the kitchen.
Yes. It created a much more fluid and dynamic show. Those methods, multicam, live audience, filming on 35mm, are still the standard for sitcoms today.
And while all this is happening, their personal life is still playing out in public, especially when Lucy became pregnant again.
Yes, this was after their first child, Lucy, was born in 1951. When she was pregnant with Desi Jr. in 1953, the show was at its absolute peak.
And the network censors, they went into overdrive.
Completely. They insisted you could not show a visibly pregnant woman on television. And even worse, the word pregnant itself was forbidden. It was considered too vulgar for American audiences.
That seems so absurd now. How did they get around that?
It took a massive negotiation. They actually had to get approval from religious figures, priests, rabbis, to make sure the storyline was handled in a way that was considered morally acceptable.
And the network finally agreed, but with that one condition about the word.
Right. They had to use the word expecting instead.
Which led to one of Desi's most famous recurring gags on the show.
It did. He would deliberately mispronounce it as spectin, which always got a huge laugh, sort of poking fun at the censorship. And the episode title was Lucy is enceinte, using the French word for pregnant.
And the timing of the real birth and the on-air birth is one of those legendary moments in TV history.
It's an incredible piece of coordination. Lucy's C-section was scheduled for January 19, 1953, and that was the very same night the birth episode aired.
So while 44 million people were watching Lucy Ricardo have little Ricky,
Lucille Ball was in a hospital in Los Angeles delivering Desi Jr. The real-life birth then made the cover of the very first issue of TV Guide. It was this perfect fusion of reality and fiction.
the show, in its various forms, ran until 1960, but its end basically coincided with the final breakdown of their marriage.
The professional success just couldn't paper over the private problems anymore. The infidelity, the alcoholism, it all just became too much.
And she filed for divorce on March 3, 1960.
The day after they filmed the final Lucy Desi comedy hour. Her official claim was that married life with him had become a nightmare.
They finalized the divorce a couple of months later, but what's really remarkable, and what all the sources stress, is that they remained friends.
A deep, respectful friendship, right up until Desi's death in 1986. But the divorce did change her public persona. In all of her later TV shows, she was always cast as an unmarried woman, usually a widow.
Which brings us to the 1960s, and this is where Lucille Ball makes her most radical transformation. Not as a performer, but as a corporate titan.
It's the most important part of her legacy in many ways. In 1962, she buys out Desi's share of Desilu Productions.
And with that one move,
Lucille Ball becomes the first woman to run a major television studio.
it just completely reframes her entire story. She wasn't just in charge of the Lucy reruns. She was running a massive production house, approving new projects, negotiating deals.
And the diversity of what she produced is what's so stunning. She had an amazing eye for material that was completely outside her own genre. Under her, Desilu produced massive hits.
Hits like Mission Impossible.
And, maybe most importantly, Star Trek.
We really do owe the original Star Trek to Lucy's business sense. Let's drill down on that. That show was a huge risk at the time, wasn't it?
An enormous risk. It was incredibly expensive to produce for 1960s television, with all the sets and special effects. And when the first pilot was rejected by the network for being too cerebral,
NBC did something almost unheard of.
they ordered a second pilot. But that was only because Lucy herself championed it. Her own board members were nervous about the cost. She reportedly had to personally overrule them.
So why did she do it? Why did she, the queen of comedy, bet the farm on this expensive science fiction show?
I think her instinct was that genre shows, while expensive upfront, could have a huge long-term value in international sales and syndication. She understood the value of a library better than anyone.
She was applying the lesson she learned from I Love Lucy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She stood by Gene Roddenberry's vision, exerted her executive authority, and made sure Star Trek got on the air.
And she ran Desilu for 5 years before making her exit.
She sold her shares to Gulf Plus Western in 1967 for $17 million.
Which is about $160 million in today's money.
It solidified her status, not just as a star, but as a major entrepreneur who built, ran, and then sold a corporation at its peak value.
And while this was all happening, her personal life found stability again. She married Gary Morton in 1961.
A Borscht Belt comic, 13 years younger than her. And the famous story is that he had never seen a single episode of I Love Lucy.
So he loved her, not the icon.
That's the idea. And just like with Desi, she brought him into her professional world. She taught him the TV business, and he became a producer on her later shows.
And she spent the next decade doing what she did best, sitcoms. The Lucy Show ran from 62 to 68.
That reunited her with Vivian Vance for a few seasons, which people loved. Then after Vance left, Gail Gordon became her go-to comedic foil.
And right after that, she launched Here's Lucy, which ran until 74.
And Here's Lucy was unique because she brought her actual children, Lucie Arnaz and Desi Arnaz Jr., onto the show as regulars, again blurring that line between her real life and her on-screen one.
She also had a huge influence as a mentor, didn't she? Particularly to Carol Burnett.
A very close friend and mentor, Ball sent Carol Burnett flowers every single year on her birthday, April 26th.
Which, tragically, is also the date that Lucy herself would later pass away.
It is a very poignant detail.
Her final career moves were interesting. She really tried to stretch herself as an actress one last time.
She did. In 1985, she took on a very dramatic role in a TV movie called Stone Pillow. She played an elderly homeless woman.
A huge departure.
A complete departure. The reviews were mixed. Some critics just couldn't accept her in such a dark role, but the ratings were huge. It proved she could still draw an audience no matter what.
But her final sitcom, Life with Lucy, in 1986, it just didn't connect.
No, it was poorly received.
Yeah.
Critics found it dated, and audiences didn't tune in. ABC canceled it after only 3 months. It was a sad end to her sitcom career, but it doesn't diminish everything that came before.
Not at all. And she remained this beloved public figure right up to the very end. Her last public appearance was just a month before her death.
At the 1989 Academy Awards, she and Bob Hope came out on stage together and just received this incredible, powerful standing ovation.
And then her final illness, it came on so suddenly.
Very suddenly. On April 18th, 1989, she had severe chest pains. She was diagnosed with a dissecting aortic aneurysm,
which required immediate emergency surgery.
a 7-hour surgery to repair the aorta and replace a valve. And by all accounts, she was recovering well for the next week.
But then 8 days later,
On April 26, 1989, she woke up with severe back pain and passed away. She was 77. The cause was a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm, which was completely unrelated to the first surgery site. Just a tragic coincidence.
and her death led to this huge national outpouring of grief.
And recognition. She was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But one of the most poignant moments of recognition came a few years earlier at the 1986 Kennedy Center Honors.
This was so personal because of who was supposed to introduce her.
Desi Arnaz was scheduled to give the introduction, but he died of cancer just 5 days before the ceremony. Robert Stack had to step in and give this very emotional tribute in his place.
Even at the end, their stories were just so intertwined.
They always were.
Her cultural impact is just, it's almost hard to measure. She was on the cover of TV Guide 39 times.
A record, including the very first issue in 1953 with her newborn son. And years later, the magazine voted her the greatest TV star of all time.
And we can't talk about her legacy without at least mentioning the saga of the Scary Lucy statue.
Oh, right. The statue in Celeron, New York, unveiled in 2009. It was so, well, unflattering that it became this viral phenomenon.
People called it Scary Lucy.
They did, and it became this weird tourist attraction. But I think what's interesting is the intensity of the public backlash. People felt a real ownership of her image. They demanded it be done right.
And it eventually was. A new, much better statue was unveiled in 2016.
Yes, and the original Scary Lucy was just moved about 75 yards away.
Yeah.
So you can see both, which is kind of a perfect metaphor for her complex legacy.
And her life is still being explored today. Nicole Kidman's portrayal in Being the Ricardos earned her an Oscar nomination. It just shows how fascinating that dual identity of hers still is.
And that's really the core of it, isn't it? You have Lucy Ricardo, the unparalleled physical comedian who made generations of people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Lucille Ball, the hard-nosed, visionary executive who ran Desilu with an iron fist and extraordinary foresight.
The woman who was steering the studio that greenlit Star Trek and Mission Impossible. Which brings us to the final thought we want to leave you, the listener, with to explore.
Which of her legacies was truly her most radical accomplishment? Was it the creative one, the beloved performer we all remember so fondly?
Or was it the corporate one? The pioneer who invented TV syndication, who broke the glass ceiling for women in studio leadership, and who launched some of the most enduring franchises in television history.
Her genius was that she mastered both the craft and the corporation. And it proves that sometimes the biggest laughs are funded by the shrewdest business decisions.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the extraordinary life and executive accomplishments of Lucille Ball.